Everybody, this is the regular meeting of the Housing Committee for May 1st, 2024. I am Kathy Hunter. I will be chairing tonight's meeting, and tonight we are joined by our Housing Committee members, Jim Graham, Donovan Lofters, Mary Dean, Louis Schaefer, and Miles Katz. The first item on our agenda would be the approval of the April 3rd minutes. I'm hoping everybody did have a chance to go over those minutes.
I wasn't able to.
You weren't here. I was not here, but I did watch the meeting. If you watch the meeting, you're good,
Yep. I'll move to accept them.
okay?
Second.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Any discussion on the minutes? I would just like to point out that these are great minutes, and I'd just like to thank Mary for doing these minutes, meeting after meeting. I know this is not easy. It's very time consuming putting these minutes together, and we do have pretty robust minutes, and I think that's really important for the work we do, as for the public. So I just want to thank Mary for her contributions and taking over this wonderful task of taking minutes. With that, the next item is public comment. And I'd like to welcome Susan to the,
Do you want me to go up here, or you can hear me? I don't know.
no, he needs the microphone.
to be able to hear you.
Also
Do I do something like
the
this?
mic is better.
Is the red light on?
Is the red light?
There's a red light on.
Yeah, you're good.
I'm good.
Okay.
Hi, Sue Torgerson, 19 Park Lane. I have a couple of questions. Kathy, I ran into you at the Earth Day, and we started talking a little bit about the house I sent you to on Fountain Street, but then the wind took over. So can you explain what happened? Did you guys check into that? I know I read Jim's comments in the minutes that he doesn't think that very feasible. I don't want to put words in your mouth, Jim. Tiny houses, doing tiny houses, but I like them.
No,
But-
I'm not dead set against them. Some are good, some won't work.
Okay, well,
Depends on the, placement.
well, that's kind of, I guess, along the same lines as, okay, so how did you make out, you said you had a developer?
We had a developer look at the property, and just the topography of the property. It was just very, very slopey, and just didn't think it was a great site for development. So that was our, extent of which we checked it out.
Okay, so and now my other questions are, as far as what the housing committee is doing, what are you looking at to get housing for affordability is a big question for me, because what does that really mean? Is that for people who are on like Section 8 and really need it, the homeless? What's
Yeah,
part of
well,
the
our
whole
homeless,
agenda?
that's a great question. And it's a topic we bring up all the time in terms of, the affordability aspect. We're looking at 60%, 80% AMI, just to at least start with the affordability for have people that work in town, be it your teachers, your policemen, people that work actually in this building, to be healthcare workers,
People who live here, already in the town?
people who are connected to the town.
Town somehow, okay.
And people who are living in town but are in need of housing. And I'll go over that a little bit,
Yeah.
because there's people that are struggling to keep their housing, and just to give the opportunity for people that are here in town to be able to stay in town.
And you're gonna discuss the people who are struggling?
Yeah.
Okay, you're gonna
Yeah.
do that. And in the minutes, there was something, a COG, I'm not sure if that was the right letters.
Probably SC.
Yep.
Scrog.
Scrog.
Scrog?
I thought it was just like CO something. I thought it was and I didn't know what it meant, but I gotta play those in my head because I don't know a lot of them.
In the last minutes?
I think it was in the
CDBG?
last minutes, but there was a lot in those minutes.
Yeah,
So
well, there's
that's a lot to
POC
go through.
there's POCD, which is the Plan of Conservation Development.
Yeah, that I don't think was it. Is there something with a
CDBG?
C?
Squawk would be the one I,
Oh, maybe.
It's not, there's no,
Okay,
no
because that would
reference
be,
to the cog in the minutes.
Open, what is that an acronym for? CUPOP, what is, well,
Oh,
CU,
CUPOP, that's
That's CUO.
Commission of publicly owned properties.
Or is there a commission on development or something maybe? I don't
No,
know.
it's.
No, it's
it-
CDBG is what she's talking about. I
Maybe
think it's the only
CDBG?
other acronym that's in here.
What is it? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
A CDBG.
That
Okay.
wasn't
What is-
defined?
What is that?
It's in a
stand
couple,
for?
it's in a couple different places.
CDBG, it stands for Community Development Block Grants. So it's a source of funding we're looking at to get planning capacity into the town.
Okay,
and don't feel bad, Sue, about not knowing acronyms.
Yeah.
I always speak out against them. I've done it frequently because, and I've been in a million meetings, but it's just easier knowing the full name than doing the acronyms. It
Or
drives me
it-
crazy.
even if you told me, it doesn't mean I remember it.
Yep, I
don't
know.
retain that.
Well, it's an error on my part. You should always put the full thing out and then the acronym
Yep.
afterwards, so.
Well, I'll learn.
I personally apologize to you for that.
Not a problem. I think that's it, so I'll
Okay.
let you go.
All right, well, if you have anything else, or casual, for now. All right, so the next item on the agenda is my chair report, and what I'd like to do is just really talk about Earth Day, that a lot of us participated, and I want to thank everybody for being there. We had a great turnout, and people were there for a good part of the day, so thanks Donovan and Mary, who was bopping around. Elaine and her whole family was there, so that was fun. Miles was there for most of the day, as was Warner Marshall and his wife. So it was just a great turnout to have people there and to see us and to be able to interact with the public. That was pretty cool. You know, the event was pretty well planned out. I have to say kudos. Are you part of the sustainability committee?
No, I'm just another one of the.
Yeah, they are, they did a great job. I was on a meeting and they did a lot of planning for that, and I thought they did a really good job planning this. I thought it was a great day of bringing the community together. Our particular table was kind of on the fringe of the action for a while. I kind of think the Sustainability Committee thought perhaps that the Cardboard City activity would be a little bit more exciting, would bring more attention. But it looks like they never got past the pre-development phase because they were just sitting there with their boxes and never really did much of anything. So I'm not sure what happened there. But we ended up moving to the upper tier, and we got some more action talking to people. We signed up, like 6 people everybody that came over to the table was really interested in talking about housing, was really supportive of what we were doing. 6 people signed up to be part of, if we have any future activities, to be part of it. So I thought that was good. We did, the wind was a little bit of our enemy that day. We had a really nice display for about 5 minutes, and then everything just kind of flew off. So it's a good thing we had our best selects books, and I do have your books, Mary, in my car. Because I was able to hold down the different books we suggested for reading. Actually was useful in holding down all our papers, even though we weren't trying to have too many papers. But it was just really windy. Everything was just falling over. But I mean, that's not anybody's particular fault. Let's see.
Why don't you hold up one of the things that you had, their little cardboard thing right there,
Yeah,
so people
yeah.
can see it?
I did want to talk about. Why isn't my thing working?
Because Kathy did a wonderful job of preparing materials for that table, as those of you who saw it know, really apropos and eye-catching.
Yeah, the visuals were good.
Very good.
Yes,
Miles's poster was right there.
Kathy, can you give me an idea of what people were interested in talking about?
Well, we did have a poster, I should have brought. So the fact that a third of 192 people in Woodbridge, were in that predicament kind of shows you the fact that people are becoming homeless in Woodbridge. And they end up, usually there isn't a direct, as they say, there's not a direct flight from homelessness, from Woodbridge to homelessness. They usually end up, going through a series of steps, and they usually, eventually, if they end up in a shelter, it's going to be New Haven. But I just want to bring out the fact that there is a housing crisis that's in every single town in Connecticut.
When you say,
Number may understate the number of people who are looking for assistance, because sometimes, the churches and synagogues are able to help.
Yeah.
You don't
Oh,
have
they
to-
actually said that at the
Oh.
meeting.
Oh,
It's-
is that right?
It's way understated,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, yeah.
you say
That's
201 or
hard.
211, what is?
211. 211 is a number.
It's called the Coordinated Access Network,
Yeah.
CAN.
Phone number.
Yeah.
Operated
It's
by
like-
the United Way, started, maybe 12 years ago. That's the idea, call there and you get connected with the services you need.
And that would work also on your cell phone as well as landlines?
Correct.
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
yes. I failed to mention that Ben Fink is also in the house.
Hi,
Hi, Ben.
Ben, you heard everybody that's here, right?
sure did.
Okay, all right. Yeah, so 211,
211 or
211.
okay.
So it was a way of you get information through InfoLines. So the United Way of Connecticut, as Ben said, InfoLines set up 211. And for those that are in need of housing, they get connected with a coordinated access network there's like 7 of them throughout the state. There's a Greater New Haven coordinated access network. It's called a CAN. So the New Haven CAN helps, place people in housing. So that's where the call starts. It all starts with the 211 call. So with that, I did want to remind folks, because we did highlight some homeless providers at our table. Today is May 1st. We're in the midst of the Great Give. The New Haven Community Foundation sponsors this for all nonprofits throughout New Haven. So we had, so if you're, so obliged, and maybe for people out in TV land, we did have information from Columbus House, New Reach, and Bethel Center to support these agencies. These are agencies that end up supporting the town, Woodbridge neighbors when they become homeless. So we hope that everybody could, think about supporting these agencies during this great gift. Because for some of these agencies, it's like their number one fundraiser for the year. So that is it for since I can't open up I can't read the rest of my report. I just want to open it up.
Turn it off and turn it back
I
on.
don't know why it's stuck, yeah. Let me see if I could just shut it down. I don't know, here we go. Still not. Anyway, in the meantime, is there any, for those people that were there on Saturday, do you have any comments you'd like to make? What was it, Miles and Mary? I know you weren't there too much at the table, but Miles,
No,
you're
I
there
ran
for.
home to get rocks.
Yeah, Mary had to get rocks to
Rocks
hold the
and,
papers
rocks
down.
and snacks. I thought it was effective to have the piece of cardboard saying, note that some people will be sleeping, this is where some people are going to be sleeping tonight.
Oh, yeah, I
thought
did
that
have a
was
piece of
good.
cardboard.
I thought that was particularly effective, given the fact that the cardboard city was right
Yeah.
next to it,
Yeah.
until, of course, we moved.
Sorry, what did the cardboard say?
On the cardboard, was a big piece of cardboard, and it said something like, think about it, someone close by tonight is using this cardboard to sleep on or something like that.
Yeah.
Nice.
So it's just talking about, because the cardboard city was about the different uses of cardboard. With this, there's a lot of people that are also using cardboard to kind of stay dry on the cold, damp ground as they sleep outside.
How many people approximately came by to either talk or we still look at the table?
I don't know, 20 or so maybe. I mean, there was I would say at least a dozen people stopped and talked, and or at least looked at the poster. I think the poster grabbed some people. I would say about 20 people or so.
And any idea of how many people were there?
You
At
know,
the event?
I
Yeah.
wasn't walking around. I don't know. But there was a lot of activities, because they had activities down
Games?
by the Grove, and they had activities where the concerts were, and they had then we were in front of the center school, so it was kind of hard to tell, but it
We were
was a
next to
crowd.
Yeah,
Conservation.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a jolly day. At the Historical Society table, we had some things for children, so I
Oh.
could grab them and, their parents would sort of come along. I heard about there was a pig. I think whoever had the
Oh,
pig
yeah.
really got a lot of attention. But that was it was a good, jolly day
That's
for people in the community. And that's one of the reasons why I think that it was really good for us to be there, to be representing an activity, a group that was working for the town and was part of the picture in a positive way,
Very nice.
It was. I mean, Kathy worked hard on it, you could tell.
I got a question if I could.
Sure.
This is, I'm a community organizer, as you know, this is the way I think about stuff. Did you meet anyone there or get involved in any conversation with people there that you think it would be worthwhile to follow up with? Thinking about more people who we want involved and informed and taking part in public meetings and speaking and anything like that. Are there people that you met that maybe didn't know as well that would be worth following up with?
Yes, in fact, we did take their name and emails, so I could share that with you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to see it, but most importantly would be if there are folks, here on the committee that would be interested in saying, hey, I really appreciated talking to you about that stuff. Would you be up for getting coffee? I'd love to get to know you better, or something like that.
Yeah, I
So
don't.
you can also share them with me. I can do it.
Yeah, I might.
As you know, I'm working with Elaine we're gonna get a little house meeting at her house together later this month with some people that are interested in the community, and so that's what I'm thinking about. Is that people would be interested in being part of that conversation.
I will send you the emails.
Sounds great.
And Ben, we should note that Sue, who is not really an outsider, she's here all the time, and we appreciate that, was there as well, and, she's somebody who we value her opinion, and she states it, which is great. You can't ask for anything more.
Awesome.
Okay. All right, well, the next item on the agenda was the, talking about the housing and plan conservation development. I can't even, my computer just shut down. I don't know why it's not working. So I can't even really talk about it. I think I'll just make this quick.
You want to see it? Because you can see it on my computer.
Do you have internet?
Yeah, we have it. Yeah, we have it here.
Can you bring up the plan of conservation development? And what I want to do is, just as a background, the town is undergoing update of their plan of conservation development, and that is a plan that gets updated every 10 years. And what that is it's a guide for the town's land use. So the POCD, yeah, so it, yeah, perfect, thank you.
Is it your battery?
Be careful.
Is your
What's that?
battery? Is your battery?
I don't know, do you wanna give this to Donovan, maybe he could shake it up and see why it's not working?
Shake it up. That's not a good thing, by the way.
I don't know, it's,
Expert.
it's just frozen.
It doesn't turn off either.
Doesn't seem like.
I'm gonna do this, hold on.
How about if you hold the power button down for 40 seconds or so?
So how do you page, okay, page down. All right, so what would be good, because the consultants that are gonna be working on the plan of conservation development, they're going to be meeting with planning and zoning next week to start the process. And I suspect we're gonna have a pretty good part in terms of the housing aspect of it. Has anybody looked at the plan of conservation development? It ran from like 2005 to 2015, no, 2015 to 2025. And so the first chapter talks about demographics and housing. It's the very first chapter. And we are going to have, or the town's gonna have to have a lot of updates, because the plan was written, back in 2015 based on the current zoning regulations. So there wasn't much of a build-out analysis or anything of that sort, because there wasn't any ability. Did you get it working?
What's your
I
password?
I just rebooted. I don't know if it works.
Yeah, what's your password?
Yeah, but
She doesn't remember
shook
her
it up a
password
little
either.
bit.
No, I know my password, I just don't want to say that.
Oh,
That's not my
oh,
phone.
everybody's
Or
gonna
else-
come.
Rebooted.
Well,
or else
we're all
it
gonna
wouldn't
see
be-
what your letters are.
Yeah, I did that, but it didn't work. It didn't,
I don't understand. It's the hardware.
all right, well, that,
Maybe yes and maybe no.
yeah. So,
For Windows.
Yeah, my kids have an
All these creaky PCs.
all right, 1 sec.
Well, you can see it on your phone too, right?
Yeah, actually, you're right.
You just open your email, click on the attachment,
Right.
and you can see it if you want to see it.
Please see if I can-
big for type stuff like that. And then auto.
Looks like it's working, thanks.
I start yelling at the phone. No, I really.
Okay. All right, Mary, I can give you back your
Oh,
computer.
you can have your pen back.
Sorry, okay.
You can use my pen as long as you want. I stole it from Chase.
At work, they kind of held it down for like.
unable to write properly.
10 seconds.
Yeah, that usually helps.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you, Donovan.
The other trick might be to pull the battery and put it back in.
Ooh, that's harsh.
Okay. So, and just to emphasize that the chapter is about, they talk about housing and demographics, because there was a concern by a couple of folks that we needed to redo the demographics in order to feed into the plan of conservation development. They are going to be doing the demographics to make sure that information feeds in. So that would not be an issue, and I think that the Board of Selectmen pretty much understood that it would be just kind of a duplicative effort if we were doing, the demographics to update the affordable housing plan, to update the POCD, while the POCD was also doing an update of the demographics, so,
So, can I ask a question?
sure.
Has the demographics been updated already following the 2020 census?
Yes, they said they had an update up to 2022.
Did the
Yeah.
SCROG do it?
No, this
You
is,
know?
they use, everybody uses the American Community Survey.
Yeah.
It's like
Oh, yeah.
that survey that updates the census every couple years, so they use that process.
Is it published?
Yeah, yeah.
I'd like to know where
Where-
it is.
where can you
When you
find it?
read this and you read the demographics section, you can't help but wonder what it is now. Because of course they projected what they thought it might be in another 10
Yeah,
years.
yeah.
And you know that we've heard a great deal about changes in the population of various ages and so forth.
Right. No, it would be
So-
interesting. Yeah, the American Community Survey is part of the U.S. Census, and it's a survey that updates the U.S. Census that takes place every 10 years. But then they have like this intervening survey that updates information. So that would be on the U.S. Census website. And if anybody has, if I'm getting that right or wrong, please shout out. Ben, I don't know if you know anything about the American Community Survey.
I do not.
Okay.
Just wondered where we were getting the information. from.
Yeah. Well, the consultants are going to be looking at the demographics and housing needs. As I talk about, and the consultants that did this plan 10 years ago is a reiteration of the same consultants doing it currently.
Oh,
So they're under a different name, but they were essentially merged with another company, but it's the same folks that are going to be working on this. So they're, which is great, because then they're just kind of updating what they had before. But there's going to be a lot of updates to it. So just going through and I'm just rolling through some of the chapters when they talk about past and future population estimates. Changes in the median age. Boomers and millennials are driving changes in Woodbridge's age structure. That was in, the current POCD. I think that's going to be pretty much the same. I think it's still true that our population is getting older, and there's going to be a need for smaller houses. They talk about student enrollment, so that was a big issue with the affordable housing plan, that we didn't really accurately portray the student enrollment. We're off by a little bit, but here they definitely are going to be looking at student enrollment. 10 years ago, they talked about has recently declined, but maybe rebounding. So all that will be factored in. Just to say that's the reason why we're not going back and redoing all our demographics, because the POCD process is going to be doing this. Let's see. They talk.
Are they going again to produce the same kind of maps that we have in the current POCD? Redo all of those maps?
I think they said this time, in order to save on expenses, that they were working with SCROG to do the mapping. Because they have a pretty robust, mapping system there, so SCROG would be doing that.
Will we have a chance to talk to them about it?
Oh, yeah, no, definitely, when they start doing the housing, I expect them to, I'm assuming they're gonna be meeting with the housing committee. At least I'm going to encourage that, and I imagine other committees and commissions are gonna want the same. In fact, they're talking about it. I know, like, the Conservation Committee was talking about making sure that they had input into the plan of conservation development. There's a whole section on conservation, open space, so that has to be reflective of what the town is looking to do for the future, because it's really projecting what the town is going to be doing, for the next 10 years. And I can tell you, housing, this section is going to be really changed a great deal because it was really premised on what was the current zoning regulations back then. Our regulations have changed somewhat, but they are expected to change more as, you know, as our recommendations come up. So that will need to be reflected in terms of some changes that we're looking for in the business district, and things of that sort.
I was thinking not just in general about helping them understand if they don't remember the sort of the climate of talking about housing 10 years ago as opposed to the climate of talking about housing now. But also sometimes there were details in there that really took me back. For example, they projected development on water company property.
Yeah.
Where did that come from?
That was in their build-out analysis, which I thought was kind of strange. You know, they said they like projected like 600 and something
Yeah.
houses, but the fact that they were talking about water, you know, water company property that would probably only be 350. I don't know. I don't understand how they factored in that property.
I would
'Cause
certainly
that's-
like to ask them that question.
Yeah, because that to me would be strictly preserved.
And I don't think they were really taking the topography into account either,
Yeah.
because they were projecting building on property that water, you know,
Right.
it's been literally rejected for development in the past.
Yeah, I wasn't really clear on that. But again, this is why it would be good for us to work with these folks. I mean, I guess there was some other recommendations they had in that after the public comment were taken out. I don't know, Sue, did you ever get involved with the planning, the POCD, like back 10 years ago? I would have, there's some history there where these consultants did come up with some ideas, came up with recommendations to promote more affordable housing that was subsequently taken out, because the community.
You can tell that.
Yes, actually, that was I think that was incorporated in the OCA complaint. They talked about the history of even the POCD development. So, and that's online, so I'm not saying anything that's not public. So I think it's really important for us to ensure that our plan gets reflected in this. And in fact, it should be like just hyperlinked into the POCD. When I worked on a POCD in a housing plan back in 2008 for the city of Bridgeport, and that's what we did. We just hyperlinked the plan into our affordable housing plan into the POCD.
Well, I was just thinking that based on our experience listening to the public and thinking about these issues, we're in a really good position to sensitize them on what some of the language means and why it's there, and why it's not there, what isn't there. I mean, for example, they talk about development on the Country Club of Woodbridge, but very delicately, very generally, nothing that is going to distress anybody. Or get
I know what you mean.
There was one factor that was highlighted, that was raised, and that really caught my eye, and it was, they were talking about the potential for imbalance in the housing stock, such, the need for smaller units was expanding, the need for larger ones was, diminishing. And one of the consequences of that is that if there is an imbalance, the value of those houses will at the upper end that are not as desirable anymore because not as many people want them, will go down. And that just makes some sense. I hadn't really considered that before, but that's something I think people should take into account when it doesn't make sense for us to have, if those demographic projections are right, and also the fact that an aging population, people need, just me personally, I don't need 4 bedrooms. terms of
Right, right.
then I mean it may affect people in the pocketbook as well as in terms of other factors. But I had not really considered that, and I talked about a little bit in a paragraph or two. I talked about the potential for imbalance, and that's something I think people should not ignore. I mean, it augurs for developing smaller units and maybe cluster housing and that kind of stuff rather than just status quo. I don't know if anybody had noticed that before, or had thought about it before, but I had not.
I think that actually happened before the pandemic.
Yeah.
The big house McMansions, the prices were going way, way down. Like the $1 million houses were selling for like, $750.
Yeah.
I think the pandemic kind of screwed up the.
Well, I don't think
market.
that it's limited to the Penny Lane or so the mausoleum that's up on near where you are.
You mean,
Yeah, right. That one. But I think it'll sort of percolate down to the houses that are in a different price point. Lower than that.
Yeah, it's building the type of houses that are going to sell, and I think the market now is for starter homes, smaller homes. I think the starter homes are really like selling like hotcakes now,
Yeah.
because that's what the need is, especially for young people, starting out.
And that's gonna the demand is going to inform developers. I mean, you're not gonna wanna develop something that isn't gonna sell.
Right.
So,
Right.
so that something I think everyone needs to take into account, particularly people that are inclined to think everything's hunky-dory the way it is, because it isn't.
Right. And hopefully, when they go through the planning and the input into this process, that's going to come out in the planning. They talk about older households being areas of lower future housing demand. And this is where they talked about the unbalanced market could erode home values, is exactly what you said. But they were talking about, but here they kind of limited their affordable housing into the Woodbridge Village area, which is, I guess the village area is the flats. They were trying to get away from calling it the flats, and they call it the village area, though I think people in the flats want to still call it the flats because they're proud of, it being the flats. That's what it's known as. But anyway, that certainly is not what we're talking about. We're talking about,
more
having
expensive.
this opportunity to be throughout Woodbridge, and there's ways of having affordable housing throughout Woodbridge. It does not have to be segregated in one particular area.
Kathy, I'm sorry, I had a question. Do you have to go through a developer for the housing? Why can't, can you use land? How do you use land that we already own? Can you buy land? Does it have to be voted on? That was another thing I forgot to ask.
I don't know if I quite understand your
Well,
question.
if the town owns property,
Okay.
they'd have to do they have to get approval to sell it to a developer?
Yes, they would have to have a town vote to sell it to developer.
Okay, if you own land, why do you need a developer?
Because you gotta build something on it.
General contractors, they. pull
That's what I
permits.
think that's what when we're talking about, when we're talking about development, we're including the people who are gonna build it. Okay, because it has to be attractive to somebody, because people aren't gonna undertake the construction project if they're not gonna make money on it. So it has to be,
Well, a general contractor's not working to make money off of it, they're working to do their job for the person who owns it.
Yeah, but town is not going to be in the business of
Did I just hear
owning
that?
Well,
Same thing.
that's-
housing. Yeah,
Why
yeah.
not?
think
You
we were talking
own
about the same thing.
property.
They would not be in the business of running an affordable housing, not affordable, any, housing development. I mean, they might do a long-term lease, like on Lucy Street, they own the property. That's a long-term lease, but they don't own the development. there's a developer that owns the development. But even with a long-term lease, that would still be, that would still have to go
Oh,
out
I
for
think I see what you're saying.
a town vote.
But then where's the accountability to it being affordable housing 10 years down the line? How do we know that it's still affordable housing?
Well, you would
Deed
have to have it deed
restrictions.
restricted. I mean, accounts, that's how you keep the affordability.
And
There's
that's for a developer just to have.
right, if you're gonna be doing affordable housing, then chances are you're gonna be using public subsidies in order to make the affordable housing feasible. And with the subsidies, you have to have the deed restrictions on there. Because that's the only way you really can build affordable housing. I
And
mean,
that should be a deterrent to a developer too, wouldn't it? Having a deed restriction?
Right.
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 Okay.
But
So then who?
well, if you have nonprofit developers that they're in this business to do it, and they get lots of, there's I think a half a billion dollars out there now in state subsidies to develop affordable housing, and it's going to like 120% of AMI. So there's a lot of incentive to build housing, and this gives major subsidy. The nonprofit developers do not make money on the housing; they make it on the developer's fee, and then throughout the operation of affordable housing is not a profitable enterprise. It's meant to, kind of break even. But where a developer makes the profit is on a developer's fee.
Right, and also bear in mind that doing just one house isn't going to make much of a difference, when the town's rate is 1.18, or if that's still the current rate. So that's why the developer would be involved in not just one, but, in at least more than one.
But not just any developer, like a Toll Brothers.
Correct.
No.
You have to have somebody who's specific.
Right,
Yes.
right.
Right.
You would, if it was a town-owned piece of property, you would put an RFP out for, say, if you wanted to have an affordable housing development on a piece of property, 50 units or whatever. You just gotta spell it out. And I assure you, there'll be a lot of developers that will figure out how to get that financial stack together to build a housing and to get a good developer's fee. I'm gonna roll through this very quickly. I think the point here I'm making is, if you could, prior to us meeting with the consultants for the POCD, is really go through the current POCD and see where things are going to be changing. Because it's gonna be changing just in terms of our zoning regulations changing. And especially in terms of what we're proposing in our affordable housing plan. We're not gonna have things just concentrated in one particular area.
So Kathy, just for clarity, are we creating an addendum to the original housing plan we created, or are we creating something?
No, this is gonna be, when you look at the plan of conservation development, they have a section. It's gonna be a chapter in plan of conservation development. Yeah. So we are going to be, they're gonna be coming up with new, demographics and more current information in order to update that. And that will in turn inform our affordable housing plan, of which we could do a amendment once we have the current information, if it warrants an amendment.
Yes, that's what it sounds like.
Yeah, which it could be, because things did change. I think the pandemic changed a lot of things up, and we might want to look at changing some of the information in there, if it does affect our strategies. So I think that's all I wanted to really stress is just, they talk about large homes, contrast with shrinking households, along the lines of what we were discussing. Existing policies can promote affordability. I think it's interesting, they just had a couple policies. So this area is really going to expand, because they were just talking about policies in terms of in-law apartments and towns renter relief and elderly tax relief programs. That was their policies. I think we're going to be bringing in a lot more policies into this. they talk about the housing action plan. Their housing action plan, and they use some of the words that are no longer like politically correct to use. They talk about preserving the character of the town. New development will be sensitive to existing land use patterns and housing character. So obviously this is going to be changing a lot. They talk about updating zoning regulations. Again, they're only talking about in terms of the village district. This is going to be, I think, changing, a great deal when this is all said and done.
And this was done 15 years ago, you said? 15?
10 years ago.
10 years ago?
Yeah, so it was, last time it was done was 2015, and so it was 2015, and it expires 2025. So we have to have a new POCD by May 15th, 2025. So that's not too far away, so.
Well, we can be glad we did a lot of the work in advance.
Yeah, so this should be interesting. And again, it's gonna be out for public comment, so we just have to hold our line in terms of what needs to be in there. But hopefully, our work is gonna be pretty much reflected in there.
I think it'll be very helpful that we have that plan in place and that it's approved, because the wording, I was struck by the scope of the things that they address in the POCD, really quite familiar in terms of its scope and the kinds of issues that they address, but the way that they address them is so different.
Right.
I mean, we're much more specific, much more detail-oriented, data-oriented, and holding people to accountability for making change. And that's a different attitude than I saw reflected
Yeah.
in the POCD.
Yeah, no, I think people's attitudes are changing.
I hope so.
So I think it's all good. Okay, I did want to talk a little bit about the incentive housing zone. Let me see if I can pull up my report again. One sec. Okay, here we go. All right, so I had gotten some information that the state is going to be putting out some funding for a program, which is the Incentive Housing Zone Program. And what that provides is some incentives to the town to create overlay zones. And what the overlay zone is, if you have like a project and a site, you could overlay it with particular zoning that you would be able to increase the density just for that piece of parcel. So they have certain density requirements. And so, of course, you'd have to have, you have to have the right, public infrastructure. You would need the capacity to be able to build higher density. I mean, if it's a site that's on public water, it has infrastructure with public water and sewer, then that's not an issue. You can't have, if you're not in a public water supply watershed, you do have the potential of being able to do higher density with the more advanced technology of having surface, septic systems. You could do higher density if you have the right, soil content and if you're near a public water supply. So it really just depends on the site. But if you have the right site, then you could do some higher density. So the question is trying to locate those sites. And another thing I meant to mention before is it looks like the town will be hiring a planning firm, which could help us drastically with these types of developments we're looking at doing, because it's really encouraging private people that own land. It doesn't have to be necessarily town-owned property. It's just making this information out there for people who own land that may wanna either repurpose their land or use it for, it makes it more valuable if we're able to change the zone and create more units on a piece of property, then the value of that piece of property goes up. So it's getting that information out there. So I think the first step, I thought, was maybe getting somebody in to talk about to get somebody in to talk about the incentive housing zones and how that would work, and then kind of operationalize, okay, when this program comes in, how do we go about identifying property that would be suitable for having higher density housing? You know, looking at the, you know, where it's located, is it near is it on public water? Is it near someplace where you could hook up to a public sewer? Because maybe you're not, maybe you're not on public sewer, but maybe you could have an easy hookup if it's nearby. I'm losing my voice. So I wanted to talk about whether or not you thought that might be a good idea to maybe bring in somebody who could talk about it much better than I could about incentive housing zoning and how that would work and what we could do to promote that. Any questions?
I think it's a good idea, if there was a question.
Absolutely.
All right, so maybe I'll get somebody in. I could talk to Ben Lovejoy to see maybe somebody from the state could come in. I know they're gonna have this opportunity out, I think, in the next couple months. And I think if we could get ahead on it, and then kind of like market it, and then maybe get people interested in maybe considering doing something like this. You know, having an incentive housing zone would mean that you'd have to get this to planning and zoning, so they would have to approve the different, you know, areas of you know, where the incentive housing zone would be. And, you know, if anybody's interested, I could, you know, once the opportunity comes out, I will send that out to everybody to take a look at. There's opportunity housing incentives on the DOH website, but it's supposed to change up a little bit, because right now it talks about just having like 20% affordability of 80% AMI. I think they're looking for a little more deeper affordability on it. So that might be changing up. Because right now, in terms of the regulations, they talk about the zone, they have minimum allowable density requirements. So if you have a single family, if you're doing single families, you have to have at least 6 units on an acre. For duplexes or townhouses, you have to have 10 units on an acre. For multifamily housing, you have to have 20 units on an acre. But for smaller communities, I'm not sure if we are a smaller community, we might be, that those requirements might be less. So that's kind of what they're looking for in terms of higher density housing.
Pretty high.
So, is there any questions on that? If not, then I will try to get somebody in for June to talk about, you know, the program or what it might look like.
Can you put that in newsletter, so we know?
We don't really have a newsletter.
Well, the town news?
Oh, yeah, no, when we start advertising for it, yeah, that's definitely gonna go out in a newsletter.
Okay, like ahead of time, so you understand what all that's about.
Yeah, I'm just thinking how that would work.
Would be on the agenda as well.
Yeah, because I'm only thinking that it's gonna have to happen soon, quickly. You know, so this is not gonna come out probably for another month or so. So my hope is to get somebody in next month, but that may not even be out yet. So it's kind of a timing issue. So I'm thinking it probably is gonna come out once the opportunity comes out and we're trying to market to folks.
Yeah.
But certainly, you know, if you want any, like, information, I mean, I could send you information in terms of where it is on the DOH website if you wanna look at it.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's interesting. I do. I may represent 5 people in town. I don't know.
Yeah.
Might think the same.
It's a good way because, you know, as opposed to like changing, like doing like a complete overhaul of the zoning that, you know, multi-family housing is allowed anywhere, everywhere, no matter what. This is a way of like controlling it in a way to just kind of pick, you know, certain spots where it would work well. And so it kind of gives the town, you know, their own, you know, destiny as to determine how they would want to see the town look like. And in terms of determining where is the best area for having, you know, higher density housing.
So we would just be looking into this as a committee to see if we think it's appropriate to recommend further investigation, or what would be the next
I
step
would-
for us?
The next step would be to have somebody in here to really explain this
Right,
policy
right.
much better than I'm explaining it, because I just kind of know it on the surface that it's a way of just changing the zoning. And then, you know, how would you go about kind of marrying that ability to be able to change a zone on a parcel with somebody, you know, be it a developer, be it just a private landowner who may be interested in doing this type of investment, because somebody might have a piece of property and say, hey, you know, my property just went up in value by you know, 2-fold, 3-fold, because now I'm able to do this development.
But they wouldn't be able to do it until after TPC said it was okay.
They have, right, TVC would have to.
So it's all theoretical until.
Yeah, well, it's, I would say it's more theoretical, it's definitely doable.
Well, I mean, in terms of applicability and places where it could be applicable in Woodbridge. So
We would have to find out what.
we'd have to find out.
Right, you'd have to, because you'd have to have certain, I mean, there's certainly, there's
Right.
places where you can't do it, you know. You
Very
can't do it
broad.
on a ledge, you can't do it in a public water supply watershed. You know, there could be some areas where a subsurface, you know, septic doesn't work because the soil's not good. Things have to line up, but certainly I think there probably are a lot more areas where where this could happen. So it's the kind of doing that background, so when this opportunity does come up, we're able to take advantage of it. So the other zoning I wanted to talk about was the Guilford inclusionary zoning. I'm not sure if people had a chance to look at this. I know that the town, you know, Woodbridge is also looking at this. I know the ordinance committee was looking at this, though I think this would come out of planning and zoning. I found their affordable housing regulations in terms of inclusionary zoning. I found it interesting that they start with if you have 2 units, one of them has to be affordable, which I was really surprised, because I think that would be a deterrent for people wanting to do 2-unit housing. They have to make one of them affordable. You know, so if somebody just wants to do that type of development, I think having a 2-unit development is a great way of promoting housing options and having the small A affordable. I never saw that as a way of creating, you know, a state mandated affordable unit. Personally, I think if you're required to have an affordable unit in a 2-unit development, I think it's gonna discourage people from doing 2-unit developments.
May be intended to make people build larger projects.
Yeah, so I would not, I guess I would have to like hear the rationale for doing that. Warner told me that because he had an agency that did housing rehab, and on his board chair was the former Guilford town planner, who would know about, you know, the genesis of some of these regulations. So I would love to bring him in. Maybe he's another one we could bring in for next meeting and have him talk about how this how the process went and what was the rationale for having the affordability start at 2 units, because I had heard that, you know, even 3 units is too low, that you should start at like 5 units, you know, because you still want to promote units of, you know, 3 units or 4 units, and having you know, and maybe just somebody who's just not necessarily a big time investor, just somebody who wants to do it as their own, you know, personal investment, and that's really hard for somebody to do that if they have to make a unit affordable. If you're, you know, a developer and you're getting public subsidies, it's not that bad. But, you know, somebody doing it for like a low unit count, I think it makes it really hard. That's my thought.
Does that say that here in this handout?
The affordable housing.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, talks about how it starts at 2 units.
That has my own.
But the interesting, you know, and the other components, you know, has to be on par with the market rate units. What this does bring in is you know, you have the ability to have alternative siding. So if you have a housing development, but you don't want to put the affordable housing development in that particular development, you could build affordable units elsewhere. So they give you that option to do it. They also give you the option of contributing to an affordable housing fund, which was another you know, tool we were thinking about doing. And actually, the Board of Selectmen thought that was interesting, because that helps with, you know, future affordable housing developments. If you need money for pre-development costs and things of that sort, then you would be able to have a source of funding that could help you with that. So I don't know if folks have any questions. I just wanted to bring this up, because I know the town is looking at this as well. If there's any concerns.
I'm wondering if Guilford has seen any traction after creating this. Have they?
Oh, Guilford,
How long has it been since?
they just did this. This actually just went into effect.
Just took
Oh,
up,
recent-
just
oh,
started
recent-
after October's
Oh,
2023.
23.
Yeah.
New.
Yeah, but it just, I think
It's
that,
a good,
you had to have so many, a time period until it goes into effect.
Right.
And I think it just recently went into effect, so I'm not sure.
good stuff.
You know, it's a good question. I'm not sure, you know, what the results in. I mean, I could tell you.
Still early.
What's that?
Still early.
It's still too early. I mean, the good thing about this, is what I always said about our inclusionary zoning, we start at 20%, which is really way too high. You know, it doesn't really pencil out what you're doing. You know, unless you have public subsidies, if you're trying to do a development based on, you know, having the number of units kind of offset, you know, having the market rate units offset the cost of affordable housing, 20% is typically too high to do that. 12% is where it could work out. So it does, you know, 20% does kind of discourage, you know, affordable housing development if you were trying to do it within a market rate type of development. So, you know, another thing I meant to mention in my report was that we we are scheduled to do another update in June. They want to kind of keep the ball rolling with the housing committee. So I think I will, bring this up and talk about it. We'll have time to talk about this in June as to what we'd like to report. But certainly, I think the idea of tweaking, and this is where we need the professional help. This is where we need a planner to figure out what is the best, composite of inclusionary zoning. Is it, is it 12%? Is it 10%? Or is it 20%? At what point does should the affordability restriction kick in? Here they're doing it right from jump at 2. I don't think that's a good idea. But maybe there's a reason for that. I'm not sure. So that's why, I'm really hoping that if we do have a planner, it's, we could start with that person right away as well, because he will be working with us on the housing aspect. So that's that. If you guys could if you want to read it over and, we could discuss this a little bit more at another time. But I did want to give people that information. With this, they have a affordable housing trust fund. So that could be another recommendation for the town, is to create an affordable housing trust fund. I really like this idea. The problem is you have to administer it. But it's a great source of funding for somebody who wants to do, is thinking about doing the development, because the hardest thing to get funded is pre-development. Because you have to do the work, you have to do, the site plan, you gotta see whether or not you could put the septic system in it. All that stuff costs money. So it's hard to get that part funded. So I would recommend that we also think about doing an affordable housing trust fund. And then the last Guilford piece is they are officially, I think they're officially now, a housing commission. They were originally an ad hoc committee.
They're getting there. They're in the waiting period or whatever. They haven't officially been seated yet, but it's gonna happen.
Yeah. No, I talked to Christy. No, I think it's happening.
It's in the process, as I understand it.
Right. It hasn't happened yet. But what I thought was interesting about the ad hoc committee, it was actually a committee that was under their economic development commission. So it wasn't planning and zoning. It was under economic development, which is an interesting take on housing, because, I always said housing is a form of economic development in so many ways. It's where you generate your revenues. It's where you generate people to frequent your businesses. It's it definitely is.
Housing is where jobs go at night.
That's where that's how you support your jobs. Yeah. So it's really just interesting that they did put that under economic development and not under planning and zoning, as some commissions did. But I did, I'm not sure if folks got to read through this. I thought it was really interesting in terms of the purpose, because right in the purpose, they really wanted the commission to advise and interact with other municipal agencies. So they were encouraging that the commission work with other commissions together. As opposed to what we were told at the Board of Selectmen. They really didn't want us working with other committees or commissions. They wanted us to be, I forget how they describe it, the spoke that reports to the hub, and then the hub would figure out who and when, people talk to other people. It wasn't really a form of, they weren't encouraging committees and commissions to work together. They wanted strictly for us to report to the Board of Selectmen. This was just one person that was talking like this. But here, right in this purpose, they really want us, you know, they want this commission to work with other agencies.
When did they say that? When did you hear that?
That was when I presented
In March.
in March, because there was concern that I was reporting to planning and zoning, that I was reporting to Coupa, and that I was only supposed to be talking to the Board of Selectmen. But here, again, the idea is here, they encourage their commission, their housing commission, to talk to other agencies, which is the way it should be. And so is there any questions on, I don't know if people had a chance to
That's really interesting.
read through this. They are looking, I know the town is looking to form a formal commission. I'm still like, you know, thinking, should it be Affordable Housing Commission? Should it be a housing authority that can actually do something to develop housing? You know, maybe this is like a precursor to a housing authority. I don't know. But you know, if each town has the power to create a housing authority, and within a housing authority, you get certain powers, and you get certain access to resources, and then you could, you know, actually, you know, develop housing. Where, you know, a commission is a commission, you know, we talk, but we're not building housing. And I think it would be great to have a instrumentality of the town that can actually build the housing.
And towns can also vote to contract with another town's housing authority. We were talking about this at Scrod with Carol Martin, who lives in Orange, and has built housing in Orange, and is the director of the Fairfield and Westport housing authorities. And so
Yeah,
for
but she's-
towns where it's too big of a lift to, you know, to build a whole structure themselves.
Well, Carol built the affordable housing in Orange under the auspices of her development company, not under
Correct.
the housing authority. I mean, right now, I think it's still in legislation, you know, housing authorities are not able to cross their borders. I mean, a lot
My
of,
understanding is, what you're saying about the housing she built in Orange is absolutely right. But I'm saying in her capacity as executive director of the Fairfield and Westport Housing Authority, I believe that because I asked her this question directly, that if a town votes to explicitly invite another town's housing authority in, then that's the thing that can be done. But I can definitely check with her.
okay. To invite a housing authority in to develop the housing. I mean, so there's a lot of housing authorities that do have their own development corporations that go to different places to develop their housing. I think in terms of the crossing, you know, the borders, I think that has to do with their being able to use their Section 8 vouchers, like in a development in another town, and still being able to hold on to their admin fee. That's always been like the issue. It, you know, porting the subsidies to another town.
Yeah, these are good questions, you know, to take to her if we're interested.
Yeah.
Kathy, is this an amendment to their, the Guilford Planning and Zoning Regulations document? What is this?
Right, that would
Exactly.
be, this was their inclusionary zoning regulations, which would have been an amendment to their zoning regulations.
Who wrote it? Do you know? Excuse me.
They spent a lot of time on it. I'm not sure who, do you know, Ben, who wrote the inclusionary zoning for,
I
Guilford?
think it was Jamie Stein, their former planner, who just left this past summer.
Okay,
I think she was the major force behind it.
all right. Do you know if she worked with anybody, or she was able to draft
I
the
don't
language?
know. Let's find out.
I mean, we can ask those questions. Again, you know, maybe I can invite the town planner that was before Jamie.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, I know the Guilford folks and the Madison Housing Committee, they've been going to each other's events and presenting each other's committees and learning from each other. And so I'm sure, you know, if invited, they would be happy to come to Woodbridge as well.
Yeah, no, I really, you know, we did kind of cross-pollinate a little bit. Elaine and I went to Christie's event, her sustainability committee event, which was the week before Woodbridge's, so it was interesting seeing what they had. But no, I think it's good to kind of work together on this. All right, so that's what I have about zoning. I think we should kind of continue the conversation once I bring in some professional help to talk about this. But I wanted to just give an overview of some information to read, and so when we do bring people in, we could probably have better conversations in terms of how to operationalize, you know, how do we work these zoning into actually get the housing that we want to see. So with that, we are at our last agenda item, which is furthering community conversations. And Ben, I think I'm gonna have you talk about that a little bit, since you've been doing some things around that.
So I'm gonna give a brief overview now, looking at time, and then if anybody wants more details, feel free. I've been talking with Elaine at Greater Length, so basically where we're at, the way I see it, and Kathy and I have talked about this a lot too, is we kind of got to where we could in terms of doing the approach that we took at the library, at the senior center with DEI, et cetera, of like getting people together and talk. And we tried to do more conversations, and there were not a lot of organizations that were interested, that kind of understood what we were doing and why, et cetera. And I think that, I mean, housing is a tough issue to start with, especially, you know, in a place where there has been a lot of contention, there's been a lot of challenges, et cetera. And so what we are looking to do, and I am doing this primarily, I think you all know, I'm a consultant with two organizations in Connecticut. One is the SCROG, the South Central Regional Council of Governments, which I've been primarily here representing in the past. I also represent Teen Inc., which is the community service, the anti-poverty agency that covers 10 towns in and around the Lenadotuck Valley, including Woodbridge, as well as Orange and Guilford, Bethany, and then the towns to the west and north there in the valley. And so with those, you'll remember Jamie Rood came to some of our meetings. I work with him on the team related project. So All In for Milford was created under those auspices, and Milford was also a place where it was really difficult to talk about housing at first. And so what we did was we got residents and community organizations together to say, let's work on anything. Let's work on anything that matters to you, where we can get people together to talk and work together with people that otherwise, you know, wouldn't, and build closer relationships, et cetera, et cetera. And we started anything that matters to you all. And we started working on accountability for, you know, how ARPA funds and American Rescue Plan funds were used. We did forums on police and community relations. We worked on a whole range of other issues. And then as I kind of thought would happen, the conversation eventually turned to housing, because housing touches everything. But at that point, we had already had people and organizations that were used to working together, that had built trust, that understood the idea we can work together across lines of party and ideology and race and class to do what's in all of our interests. And guess what's in all of our interests too is having more housing options. And as a result of that, that group now has close relationships across party lines of Democratic and Republican elected leaders. They got people on planning and zoning. They changed the ADU regulations. They're working on. They've got their Fair Rent Commission seated, and they're doing stuff. And so this is what I hope can be built in Woodbridge, which is a broad-based group of organizations and neighbors that are doing stuff together. That is not the responsibility of the Housing Committee, but that the Housing Committee can collaborate with, and that will show up at meetings when you want to have a full range of perspectives on housing, when a specific development comes up, when a specific opportunity comes up. And so this is a kind of thing that doesn't get built overnight. It usually takes, frankly, a few years, but I think that this could be the most effective way to continue to grow community involvement in Woodbridge. So that is my relatively short explanation. Happy to take questions and also happy to discuss further one-on-one.
Does anybody have any questions for Ben? Is that event over Elaine's, is that still set, or is that?
Yeah, there's a house meeting. It's gonna happen later this month. I think we were talking about limiting the involvement of the committee because of concerns about you have more than a certain number of committee members, and it becomes an official meeting. And so we didn't want it to be, we don't want this to be a town government meeting. We want this to be a community meeting. And but that we're happy to report on what's going on.
Okay.
So, Ben, would Team Inc. then be the leader of this other initiative? Of the
I'm
initiative?
sorry, say that one more time.
Would Team Inc. then be the sponsor or the initiator of the initiative that you were describing that would involve
It would not.
us?
So Team Inc. Has recognized that it's in its interest, which is to eliminate poverty in the 10 towns that it serves. Team Inc. has realized we got to get neighbors together, working together on their own selves. And so Team would be there to provide support, including in the person of me. But no, this would be something where the agenda is set and decisions are made by the people in Woodbridge and the community organizations in Woodbridge that are a part of it.
But you're going to have somebody organizing it, right?
Like I said, the goal, for the time being, the person organizing it will be me. But if we do it right,
Okay.
that's something that goes into the hands of the people that are doing it, which has happened. It's happened in Milford, it's happened in Oxford, it's happened in Seymour, it's happened in Ansonia and Derby. And so, this is a model that, looks different in every town. It's not cookie cutter, but it is something that, that we've done
Okay.
and continue to do.
So Ben, following up on what Mary just asked, so this, when the notice or the invitations go out, it will say Team Inc.?
No, it's
No, that's
not.
what he's
It will say a house meeting at Elaine's house to talk about this stuff. And then at the meeting, when we introduce ourselves, I will introduce myself as a consultant with Team Inc.
So I don't get it. So then Elaine will be the,
produced event.
right, so since it's not the housing committee,
Right.
it would be Elaine that's the sponsor when the invitation goes
Correct.
out.
Yeah.
Okay,
Elaine's having some friends over, I guess.
and who will she be?
Elaine and also Katie Poole, is formerly Massaro Farm, who many of you all met at the power mapping session. She's going to be there as well. She's inviting some people. So it's going to be, it is, if it works right, it's a grassroots effort. And the people who are involved are going to be running it and they're going to be owning it. And teams there provide support, but it is the people's own work.
And
Yes, Liz, sorry.
to follow up one more, when
Please.
Elaine introduces or talks, she'll be stating she's a member of the housing committee? Oh, that's a question, not a statement.
Yeah, I think we all are there. I mean, I think she will say she's a resident of Woodbridge and she's a member of the housing committee. What she will not be doing is saying that what I am saying here represents the views of the housing committee.
Okay, thanks.
Absolutely. These are great questions.
And I think Jen from Bethel Center was also interested in perhaps
Yeah,
being invited.
Jen is very involved in All In for Milford. She was one of the people who helped to start it. Yeah, I mean, I was suggesting, and you probably saw on the text today, Kathy, I was suggesting to Elaine that maybe it makes sense for the first meeting for me to be the only weirdo outsider, and then to invite Jen to a subsequent meeting. But Jen is terrific, and if she's interested in coming, and if you're interested in her being there, I think she could only add value to what we do.
Yeah. Well, we have to, I'm not sure if I'll be there, but
Temple Emmanuel, by the way, is a major sponsor of Bethel.
Lou, it is on my list of things to do
Yeah.
to get back in touch with you and talk about Temple Emmanuel, so thank you for that reminder.
Okay.
yeah, maybe it's just bringing, maybe you, Elaine, and bringing Jen and Temple Emmanuel. That might be a good group.
I could walk to Elaine. She's
Yeah, I know.
2 houses up.
I know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I know it's a trek for you to get there, but
Yeah.
I believe in you.
Okay. All right then. That sounds good.
Cool.
Is there any other questions for Ben? Okay, hearing none. That's last thing on our agenda. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn. I'll second.
Okay, terrific. All right, thanks, Ben.
Thank you all.
To be continued.
To be continued.
I didn't keep it under an hour, but I didn't keep it to 2 hours, so that's.
These are good.